Welcome to the Growth Whispers podcast, where everything we talk about is building enduring great companies. This is a passion that Brad, Giles, my co-host, and I have in terms of companies that are able to endure and endure for decades, generations. It's kind of exciting stuff for us. It might not be exciting for others, but we like to learn and share the best things that we learn, and that's what we do here in this podcast. So I'm Kevin Lawrence, as I've already mentioned, my amazing co-host, Brad Giles, down there in Australia. Brad, good day. How you doing? Is that how you say it? Good day? That almost sounds funny.
No, it's not. You say good day.
Good day. Good day. Is that better? Do I sound like legit awesome?
That's actually
good day.
better. Good day. It just rolls off.
Good day.
How are you today? I'm good.
I'm doing really well. Had a good workout this afternoon. I kind of had an easy morning and intended to get out and didn't. And I had a good workout this afternoon. Man, it's amazing how much better my energy and how much better I feel after a good workout. So yeah, it's good. I feel really good. And my naturopath was suggesting I try this keto diet thing to help do a reset in my system. So it's like not even minimal carbs, but like vegetables and protein and fat. And it's so strange to be focused on eating fat when you're conditioned to think it's bad for you. So I'm expected. They say lots of great things happen when you do this for a period of time. It's almost like it's like a different version of a cleanse by just eating copious amounts of animal and other proteins. So I'm feeling energetic as well. So yeah, it's good. How about you? How are you doing today, Brad?
Oh, I'm very good. I'm very good. Just had 4 days down south, 3 hours south of Perth here in the wine and surfing region of Margaret River. And yeah, it's autumn here. So it was just great to get away in the cool, the forest. Had a really good break and eager to get back into it. So tell me, what's your phrase or word for the day? Every day, for the listeners' benefit, we begin with a word or phrase, best practice that we suggest in opening meetings. Kev, what's your word or phrase for the day?
Yeah, and mine is a combination of it's a grounded reset. It was actually a pretty crazy week last week for a whole bunch of reasons. It was crazy, and I feel like instead of getting out of town, spent some time just to kind of reset things. And I needed that. And when in incredibly busy times, I needed that often. So it's like a grounded reset. So I've reset, I've refocused, and I know what I need to do. And I'm kind of excited about getting it done. So yeah, a grounded reset. And I know it doesn't sound maybe exciting, but sometimes things get a little hairy and a little crazy. And yeah, I feel pretty good about it. So that's me. How about you, Brad? What's your word or your phrase of the day?
So what happened here last week in Australia regarding the coronavirus is the federal government put all of its resources into this AstraZeneca.
Oh no, they did.
Yes, they did. All of its resources. So they bought.
Talk about betting on the wrong horse, apparently, from what I've heard. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so they bet basically the whole population's vaccination on AstraZeneca a year ago, or let's say 6 months ago, and they pre-ordered and did a whole range of things. And then there's obviously a problem with blood clotting now. So this past week, they've had to say we are now only going to have people who are under 50 to be vaccinated. Only people under 50 cannot be vaccinated using AstraZeneca.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be bad for people of that age. Wow.
Yeah, because it causes blood clots because the body overcompensates, the immune system overcompensates, and it kind of goes into hyperdrive or overdrive, and then creates these blood clots. So that in the back of my mind made me think about the immune system of an organization. And so my word is the body ejects the virus. When Jim Collins was writing Good to Great, there was a group of researchers that were in a meeting, and one of them said, the people who are A players in these organizations, these great organizations, it's like they were hired in And they just, if they don't fit, it's like the body ejects the virus. So yeah, that's my phrase today. The body
That's
ejects the
awesome.
virus. Yeah.
Well, and if there's a really grounded reset, sometimes that can cause you to eject stuff, right? You can eject the good or the bad, sorry, and bring in more good. You like how I bring that together? Grounded reset ends up ejecting the virus and all the bad stuff. Boom! When leaders are grounded and focused, they get rid of the bad stuff and they make more room for good stuff. Man, we didn't even talk about it, but we're brilliant. I feel like a rapper, like weaving two sentences together here. Anyways, yeah. Well, it's interesting, Brad. I love the idea of ejecting the virus, and I love watching it happen.
Yeah.
Interestingly, that ties into today's show because sometimes the virus ejects itself. That is when someone joins a company and they don't fit or they don't love it, they pull the ripcord and they self-eject out of the company. And that's what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about when people decide enough of you, I'm out, right? Now, whether they're like a fighter jet pilot that feels like they're flying into a mountain and they're going to pull the ejector seat and parachute out before they crash or before the company crashes, or they're just sick and tired of their boss, we're talking about that today. And an interesting stat for you to think about when it comes to why people leave. Man, do people BS themselves about why their people leave them. And there's a funny saying is that, people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And we have data to back it up. Author Leigh Branham wrote a book, 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave. It's kind of like a secret book that I tell people about. They usually haven't heard about it. And it's amazing. And what they found in close to 20,000 interviews, and I verified this through our own discussions with teammates that we'll talk about that more. But when people leave a company voluntarily, most people think they got pulled away by more money. And that's almost always a lie. That is not, now they may have told you that or a whole bunch of other things, but that's almost always a lie. Now, it's a convenient lie because then you don't have to feel like you did a crappy job. You can blame it on the other company, but it's actually not true. And the stats are, is that 89% of managers believe people are pulled by better pay. Generally, the data in the research here shows that close to 90% of the time, 90, it's something other than money was the root cause why they left. Now, at the end, they might have been pulled by a few bucks, but it wasn't the few bucks. There's these other things in this brilliant book called 7 Hidden Reasons Why People Leave, which we're going to dig right into today, so we are not kidding ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are listening to this and you have a person who has recently left you and you're telling yourself that perhaps what's happened is they left because they got a better offer, or they were, the data is telling us that there's a 9 out of 10 chance that that's just not the case. 90% chance that that's just not the case. So I really want to dig into one part from the book that I can't find right now. But what it's saying is that this disconnect between 89% of managers believe that people are pulled away by better pay, but in actual fact, it's other reasons. Okay, so this is the phrase that I love from this book. This astounding disconnect between belief and reality allows managers to deny responsibility for correcting and preventing the root causes of employee disengagement. Oh, that is just so good.
It is. And that's what drives me crazy, because we'll be in meetings. Oh, well, they went because they got paid more, which completely stops the managers and organization's ability to learn and get better. It's an easy scapegoat to not dig into the root cause. And you guys, I'm getting excited about this because when we lose good people, to me, it's a massive sin, serious problem. And it's like an undefendable error. Like, I mean, we all mess up, but if we get to the root of it, and it's interesting, Brad, what I found is that when I talk to key people in companies we work with, and we put a lot of time and energy recruiting and building key leaders in these companies. And when people come over, I'm always curious, and I always ask them, why'd you leave? And guess what? They always state one of the damn 7 on this list. It's never money.
Yeah.
Even better, I've had many leaders that I've worked with that have been offered over the time 50, 100, sometimes 150% more money. And when they don't go, I ask the same question: why did you stay?
Yeah.
And they give one of the 7 reasons, or multiples of the 7 reasons, usually, when they just say why they stay. So that's real life. It's convenient to think it's money, makes you feel better if you lose a good person. But the research says different. And when you go and dig in, and our firm, even, we do exit interviews sometimes for clients when they lose A players. When we dig in, it ain't money. But I will tell you, I do believe that they sometimes will say that, because it's a very nice way not to burn a bridge. If I worked for you, Brad, instead of sitting down and telling you that you're a jerk and a word that starts with an A that's not A player,
Does that
and
word
a
end
few
with
other words.
soul?
It is an A with a soul, yes, an A with a special type of a soul that might relate to the back side of the body. It's instead of telling you that and having you hate me forever, I can make a convenient excuse around compensation, and that way I'm not burning a bridge. I don't have to have conflict with you, and we can both save face. But it's wrong, because we're missing out on the root causes of why we lose awesome people that are so critical to our organization. Now, if they were one of those viruses, i.e. someone that wasn't a great fit, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
But in all the other cases, it's not. And I have seen some catastrophic losses we've had in companies. And but this book is a great resource to try and minimize those. And for those of you focused on retaining your best people, this is an amazing book to understand the psychology of retention, because it really goes back into the psychology in disengagement, which eventually leads to people leaving.
It's just lazy. It's a lazy excuse to say money, because as that sentence said, it allows managers to deny responsibility. And instead, if someone is saying, oh, that person left because of pay, the first response should be, yeah, but what's the real reason? What's the real reason?
And that's the culture we want to build into companies, is that may or may not be what they said, but let's figure out the real reason, because we know there's more to it than just that.
Yeah.
Like, money is not, and it's fascinating how money is not the powerful source we think it is in a lot of things. So interesting. Before we get into the magic 7, the author talks about the process of disengagement. And what he talks about is, it's almost like people gradually walk down these stairs, like they're walking downstairs towards the ocean. And then they get lower and lower levels of disengagement, and they wonder, why am I here? It's just increasing levels of frustration till it gets to the point where, metaphorically, it's like the straw breaks the camel's back. There's just so much weight on them and so much pressure that they just say, peace out, I've had enough. I'm going to go and take this job for $2 more.
Yeah. I remember a similar example. I was studying in Boston many years ago, and there was a lecturer called Dr. Gerald Bell, leadership expert from the southern US, and he had this one slide that was just fantastic. He said people need to be proud of their company, they need to be proud of their product, they need to be proud of their manager, and they need to be proud of their team, or else they will eventually leave. And that isn't what we're talking about today, but it's very similar. If people are leaving because of pay, one of my questions is, well, are we giving them something to be proud of across those 4 areas?
Yes. It's sometimes even when people ask for more pay, and I've seen it where sometimes more pay is relevant for their role. But sometimes it's because, I don't like my manager, I don't like my team, I'm not proud of the company, so you better sure as heck pay me a ton of money to justify me rotting my soul in your organization, right? And that I've seen that often. It's almost like danger pay, for those people that work up on the power lines or on the top of skyscrapers, straddling metal beams, back in the old days. It's almost like they want danger pay to deal with all the crap. And again, I'm not saying that's true in your company. I'm just saying we need to be aware of these things.
Many years ago, I had a saying amongst other people, which was that a pay rise only lasts a week. And what that meant is that after a week, it's nice to see your pay packet increase, but then you go back and you've got to deal with the day-to-day problems of an ineffective organization.
If your manager's still a jerk, even though you're getting an extra $1 an hour or a couple $100 a month, your manager's still a jerk, or your computer still doesn't work properly, or the workplace is not comfortable, or your chair is no good, or your coworkers are whatever it happens to be. And you're right, it's fascinating. There's a whole thing around compensation strategy. And around compensation strategy, it's interesting. Many companies that we work with that have outstanding cultures as part of what makes them great, they pay fairly. They're not at the highest paying jobs in the market, and they're not the lowest. They're generally somewhere in the middle. But part of the thing is they have such a great culture. People are happy to work for fair money. It doesn't need to be the best in the industry in some cases, because there's other benefits. It's like, half of the value in the job is the paycheck. The other half is the intrinsic stuff that makes you feel good about yourself and other things, which we'll get into here. So should we jump into our 7 amazing reasons, Brad?
Let's do it. So reason number 1, the job or workplace was not as expected. And then the data around this is that about 35% of American workers quit in the first 6 months. 35%. Wow. That's a lot of energy and recruitment fees and
waste
time.
And pain, headaches, disappointments. Yeah. Can you imagine both sides lose? And to me, this is like the good old bait and switch. Yeah. It's this and it's either overselling it, inappropriately selling it, ignorantly selling it, and not knowing. What's interesting is a side note, in some companies, they'll get people to talk to key employees to get a sense of what it's like. When we do interviews for executives, we want to understand the environment they're used to and that they have thrived in or not liked to see if it matches. And even in our own firm, I think we're a small boutique firm, but when we bring people on, we tell them up front, hey, it's intense here. Hey, there's very high expectations of quick responsiveness. And even, hey, our weekly meetings are Monday nights at 6 p.m. Yes, is it 5:30 or 6? 5:30 p.m. 5:30 p.m. in the evening on Mondays, which is on the West Coast. But if you're on the East Coast, that is 8:30 p.m. So our guys on the East Coast work from 8:30 till 10 every Monday night on our weekly team meeting. But it's one of the first things we tell people, even on our support team. Here's what you're going to be signing up for. And if that's not okay, that's okay. But this is what you're signing up for. So that would be a very ugly thing to find out after you took a job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that feeds into, but if you're upfront, then that's okay. That feeds into the job or workplace was not as expected. And why is that? It's often because people say, what are we going to do? People hiring managers or people who are responsible are like, we've just got to get someone in as quick as possible because this job isn't being done. In my book, Made to Thrive, I outlined the 5 roles of a CEO, and that is accountability, ambassador, culture, strategy, and succession planning. And that 5th role of a leader, succession planning, within that, there's a concept that I draw from a book called Top Grading, which is the virtual bench. And for key roles, you've got to have people that you're talking to already, people who could potentially make the fit, so that you don't have this situation, which is, what are we going to do? We're in strife. We've got an empty seat. We need to just get someone in there, because then if they're one of the 35% that leave within 6 months, you've just got a revolving door.
It is. So yeah, and that's the case. So some days where that's the case, Brad, we're just so desperate to get someone. And sometimes there's some ugly things in the company that people aren't comfortable telling. Others is just mismanagement. People actually don't paint a clear enough picture of what this place is like to make sure it's almost like, we're selling them a car.
Yeah.
And it's like they say, I want something that has four wheels and can get me to work. And then we actually believe that that's okay, versus further helping them understand, well, we sell this type of car for this type of price with this kind of warranty, this kind of gas mileage, and trying to match, it's basically in the car business, they talk about they say there's a butt for every seat, putting the right person into the right car versus just having them take the job and find all kinds of stuff that doesn't work. So again, that is preventable. We can refine over time, and we're never perfect. How do you refine over time to make sure you paint a clear picture of what the job's like? And in your interview process, make sure that you're assessing yourself whether they will naturally fit within your environment. So that's number one. Job or workplace wasn't what it was a bad surprise or a good old unintentional, usually, bait and switch. So number two, mismatch between the job and person.
Yeah.
Which we've touched on a little bit, but it ain't the right job. And the one I see all the time, a lot, is someone who is very, very social with an outgoing social personality. In a DISC profile, they'd be high on I, or high on I with influence. And then they put them into a role that's solitary. And they're supposed to sit there and work by themselves all day, and they would be absolutely miserable. Or a person who's been a very powerful individual contributor, and we put them into a manager role. And not only do they not even, and they haven't built the skills yet. Lots of people can learn to manage. They may or may not want to do it, but they actually don't have the skills to be a manager. And if you don't like managing people and don't have the skills, it would be an absolute nightmare and you would hate it. And it's hard sometimes for people to leave those promotions and go back into a individual contributor role, which is something that we see a lot.
Well, it's about getting the right people on the bus in the right seats. So you've got to make sure that the people who are in your organization are in the right role for them. And that comes back, I guess, to a degree with the reason one as well, to considering the hiring process to be, you want to spend more time hiring and less time firing. You want to spend more time up front. And the way that translates when, look, it's been a little while now, but that I have conducted interviews is I might say, so Kevin, thanks for coming in today. We spend a bit more time than everyone else that you may be interviewing with, because we see that we want to get you into the right role. And if it's not with us, then that's okay. But we see it would be a great disaster if we got down the path and you were in a role that you didn't feel was right for you, or we felt you weren't right for the role. So we spend more time to make sure that this is the right fit for you, because it's going to be a disaster for you if you come on board and then leave, and it's going to be a disaster for us as well. So we want to avoid that disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're again, very similar. We practically use that verbatim in the companies that we do a lot of hiring with, for using that top grading methodology, because, and whether it's an internal promotion or a new hire, same thing. So basically, before you offer someone a job, particularly even an internal promotion, double and quadruple check, are they going to thrive and be naturally a good fit? Not whether they want the job or not. That if they want it, that's a good start.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they will be capable at it. And again, it's our job to really see, do they have those competencies, that the proven abilities to thrive in that role, or are we going to crush them, whether it's an external person coming in or not? That's why, these people decisions are so critical, particularly even the internal promotions. They're excruciating. So that one makes sense, right? The person knows they're in the wrong job. This is painful. They don't see a way out. One, they don't see another opportunity, or two, they don't want to take a step back down again. Sometimes is the case, although we've got a pretty high success rate at getting people to make a change. Most people If you can allow them to save face, you can make a change if there indeed is a more suitable role. If there isn't, that's kind of a tough one. So number two, mismatch between a job and a person. They're in the wrong seat and they often quit because they don't see a way out. And if we leave it too long, they will quit. Sometimes we can proactively address it. But if you've got someone that's there in the wrong seat, you know it, they probably know it. How do you address this in a way that is the most humane?
Yeah. And then on to number three, there is too little coaching and feedback. So number three reason that people becoming disengaged and leaving jobs is that there is too little coaching and feedback. So I love this. I love this quote from the book. It talks about people or managers giving feedback once a year. So imagine that it's like a basketball coach telling his players at the beginning of the season, you're going to go out and play 30 games. And at the end of this season, I'll evaluate your performance. Like it's ludicrous in the context of sports. Okay. And that only highlights how ludicrous it is when you have an annual performance review and there's no coaching and feedback throughout. And so the employee thinks, I'm not getting any better here. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or if I'm doing the wrong thing. How I just want to find a job where I can get some kind of understanding and feedback so I can get better at the job and not wait another 8 months until my annual review or whenever it might be.
Yeah, it's painful. And if you go into the world of sport, I mean, they do feedback between shifts or between when the person's playing and when they come off, right? There's feedback by the coach normally right away in that moment, whether it's positive or improvement. And when there's breaks, in whatever, no matter whatever the sport is, there's breaks. So that would be, it's basically the best managers give feedback on a regular, ongoing basis, but that doesn't happen in a lot of places. A lot of people aren't great at feedback. It's a skill, and even in the book, The 1 Minute Manager just talks about how micro feedback is the key to success. And so there's the ongoing feedback versus the once a year, and people just have no clue. It's interesting. In one of my clients overseas, they had me coach a number of the key executives in a very fast-growing company. It was a new CEO that was growing quickly and a team, so we were coaching them all. It was pretty intense, although we had a real tight system to coach the executives and keep them in sync with the CEO. There's this triad model that works real well. But the point of it is these executives were dying for feedback. And the shocking thing is the highest performers usually assumed the worst. And it was almost weird. It's like the low performers were kind of laid back about it, but the high performers were worried they weren't doing good enough and they needed it. And we did these simple 20-minute feedback sessions every quarter. So I'd sit down, the CEO would be here, and he and I would have prepared for an hour in advance for the entire team. And then the executive comes in. The executive spends 6 minutes saying how they've made great progress and what they would need to work on next. And then the CEO says where they have seen great progress and what they think the executive needs to work on next. And as the coach, I'd weave that together into a simple mini plan for that executive for the quarter, their growth, what their growth goals were. And it was so basic, but the quality of the conversation was unbelievable. And the value the executive got was they were always so grateful because there was a mechanism that forced it. And it was only once a quarter, but it forced it and they loved it. And it also helped their growth. But people are all just, it's for some people, it's just not natural to give it, but yet everybody wants it. And not knowing drives people nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the data that I did within my book, everybody wants the feedback that no one wants to give. There's an HBR article about that.
Oh, I love that. Everyone wants the feedback that no one wants to give.
Yeah.
Great one, Brad.
Yeah. And so they said, do you want to receive positive feedback or do you want to receive negative feedback? Or do you want to give positive feedback or do you want to give negative feedback? Okay. And this was a survey and the outcome basically was that the highest score is that no one wants to give negative feedback. but everyone wants to receive negative feedback in the context of constructive criticism, not just having a go at you.
I
But
believe that. I
yeah,
believe that.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
and the other quick note, I've done sales training before with sales teams, right? Sales isn't everybody, but it's a great insight. And in sales teams, salespeople often never get to actually practice. All of the practices that they do is with their manager. It was with their potential customer. So they're always practicing. And so we've done an exercise where we get 3 salespeople together. One is trying to sell, one is playing the customer, and one is playing the scribe. And they basically pitch to them over 10 minutes and then rotate and then rotate. And it's a really effective way to get them to practice. And it's a form of feedback and coaching that they just otherwise wouldn't get and they crave. So sure, salespeople aren't everyone, but it's so important.
It is. And again, the best teams do lots of feedback, whether it's between teammates and from the coach. The best sales teams practice on role play. When we train people on top grading, we practice role play feedback. It's like 2 days of practice and role playing and feedback to help people get better. And you watch people get better. It's a powerful thing. You just need to find ways to engineer it into systems. And interesting, when we're scaling companies, we force at least quarterly feedback just to give people more chances to improve. And again, people want it, and it's even sometimes as simple as the positive feedback and why. Thank you for doing that, because simple things but being very specific feedback makes a difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that takes us to reason 4. There are too few growth and advancement opportunities. So they have gotten into the organization, or they're in there a while, and they realize my career isn't going to go anywhere here. The people, all of the managers above me are lifers, or there is no opportunity to grow. And there's a stat from this reason that I love. A recent survey asked employees to rate today's managers on 67 leadership competencies. Developing direct reports came in 67th. That's unbelievable. The job of a manager is to help the people around them to become better versions of themselves.
You and I know that, Brad. That is not a commonly held belief by a lot of managers. A job of a manager is often obsessed with trying to get the work done and deliver on their goals. Developing their people is kind of like thinking about polishing the hubcaps or the wheels in their car. Most people don't even think about it. They're so busy they think their job is to drive the car, not polish it, right? Unless they love to do that. Most people are so busy doing their darn job, they forget their job is to develop people. They fully forget. And I'm not saying it's right, but they just get lost in what they're doing.
The problem with that analogy, I like it, but the problem with that analogy, okay, is that if you focus your energy on developing your direct reports, unlike a polished hubcap, it will have a massive impact on your team and the organization.
Perfect. So their job is to teach other people. They're so busy driving the car, they forget they should be teaching someone else. I'll step it up. Thank you for the feedback, but great, Brad, wonderful example. Feedback on the spot about Kevin's mediocre analogy. So Kevin's improved it. The drive, they realize they got to train other people to drive, so they don't have to. See, that's why we work so well together, Brad. That's awesome. Love it. See, and you know what? You can tell by the look on Brad's face, he didn't even realize he was demonstrating it, but I caught it, and I like feedback. So yes, it's people get lost in it, and they forget. That's why they don't give the feedback. And that's a challenging thing. And going back to the advancement and opportunities, tying it back into this one, I think that the challenge here, and what drives me nuts, is when we lose good people because they can't see the opportunities.
Yeah.
But they're there. It's like the company's growing at 30% a year. We're expanding into another country, and you can't see the opportunity. And what I've learned over the years is that you got to take out a map, and you have to, with a crayon or a pencil or pen, draw them the path from where they are to where they could be, because It is often obvious to us, but they can't see it. And it's strange. And it's not that different than looking at a total destroyed old house that looks horrible from the street and even looks worse inside. Most people can't see a shining palace it could be. Like
Yeah.
a renovation person can already see it in 4 seconds. But unless you have the mind of that person, you can't see how this dilapidated house could become a palace. And the same thing with people is that some people can't see from where they are today with those managers that they think are never leaving. They can't see that growth opportunity. And we really, truly, we need to help them and paint the picture for them and almost walk them down the path. And I've seen people leave because of it, and it's infuriating.
You don't know what you don't know. Okay. So the manager has seen that path be followed many times in many different ways, perhaps, whereas the employee has never been on that journey before. So they don't know what they don't know. And, part of that is, like you said, illuminating that path, saying to them, if you can do this and this and this, that's how we can see your career growing. That's how we can see you becoming better.
Yep.
Every year there are a significant portion of the workforce who retire or who leave the workforce. And there's always young people coming up. It's always churning over. So, there is always opportunities that are arising.
And we know these things, but we often don't communicate them and wrap them into them. And that's where we have an opportunity to help them. Awesome. So basically, they don't see the opportunities to grow, and sometimes they aren't there, and often they are, but they don't see the clear path. And that's where these career path exercises and development plans, and as our manager, there's some great things that we can do there. So number 5, feeling devalued and unrecognized. Now look, some people are devalued. That might be the way that they're being treated by their manager, and it happens and it's horrible. But there's also the unrecognized or underappreciated. And it's interesting, and they talk about this in the book, but I see it myself. It's the magic of saying thank you and I appreciate it. Right. And it's interesting, one of the CEOs I work with, at the end of his day, he would send a 2 or 3 texts, sometimes 5 texts to different people, thanking them for things that he had seen today and appreciated today. Just a basic thing. Now, not shockingly, people loved him. Now, you can go over it, and it's like you can thank people for showing up. You can thank people for sitting at their desk, and you can thank people for not adding value. That's you need to thank people for their contributions, not just a ribbon for showing up. But it's a go ahead, Brad.
Isn't that the job of HR? Isn't the job of HR to congratulate
isn't that why
people?
you have an HR? HR is the make people happy department.
Yeah, people and culture manager.
And they're supposed to they're supposed to build the culture, make people feel good, and then fix my problems when my people drive me crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
way you guys roll down in Oz. That's the way you roll in Oz, isn't it? Hey? Is that the Australian way?
I know some things. I don't know about that. I can tell you that's I know you are. That's what they said in the book, though. They said, some people recognize that. Some people believe that recognition is the job of HR. My job is to get the job done as a manager, and HR's job is to recognize people. I mean, I love what you said about we send a text at the end of the day, or, it's the little things that make the big difference. Because it makes people feel good. Every time I run an offsite quarterly workshop, a planning workshop or an annual workshop, one of the things that we do is top thanks to teammates in the room. Now, that's not necessarily a manager. Sometimes it's a manager, sometimes it's not, but everyone needs to participate. So I'm going to thank Kevin for his help on the ABC project, or I'm going to thank Joanne for her help on the XYZ project. So it's little points like that that you can build in all the time. that makes them feel a valued part of the team. If the absence of
Yes.
that is a desert of recognition, and you just don't know, it's not that people, I suppose people do need it, but it's not that people need it in a needy way, but it's just that people need to know that they're valued. They need to know.
Yeah, and I want to be careful. This is not about, a love fest and every 30 seconds you're getting a thank you note. It's like, some of the best CEOs, they have high expectations and they thank when there's a job well done, but it's not maybe every day or every minute, right? There's acknowledgement, appreciation, and they often will push back and ask for better work, right? So I want to be very careful. It's not everyone gets a ribbon culture and thank you for showing up and I know you tried hard. It's,
Oh yeah.
there's cultures where there's real recognition. If you look at sales organizations, and there's awards like crazy for different things. So it's being conscious of it. And basically, as my mom taught me and my grandmother taught me, like, it's like remembering your manners.
Yeah.
Thank people, appreciate people, and say the things that you think. And you're still going to give feedback. Going back up to number 3, giving feedback when things could be better. I'd like a little more of this or a little less of that, or next time could you? Yeah. So, but basically, feeling devalued and unrecognized is a surefire way to kill someone's spirit. So, let's go to number 6. 6 was a very interesting thing. Stress from overwork and work-life imbalance. In my book, Your Oxygen Mask First, I first of all dispel the thing of work-life balance because it's impossible. And for high performers, it never works. And the fact that the self should be in the middle. Your self is the driver that makes the success at work and creates life. But the point of it is that work consumes too much energy, is the fact, which we'll agree with 1,000%. And there's not enough left for them to be happy and healthy and to have a great life. And they can really, they just get too sucked into work. And there's a fine balance there, because some of the highest performers do put an extraordinary amount of energy into work, more than normal. But sometimes it becomes a culture. Like for example, I remember reading articles in Japan where it was like, you weren't allowed to leave the office till the boss left. So people would sit there for hours and hours and hours and not even have work to do. But there was a social, in this one article in particular, I'm not saying the whole country, a social pressure to put in long hours, and so that people couldn't leave even though their work was done. And there's an example, there's a name for something of people who would die at work because they spend too much time at work.
The salary man.
Yeah, yes, they talk about there. So the point of it is that it's just that people can't live a decent life, and as a result, they're like, I can't do this. Interesting. In one of the companies where we worked with this woman who was an A++. This woman was brilliant, insanely good, never missed a deadline on anything. And so one of the key executives in the company I worked with, and one day she quit. And holy, did a few of us have a passionate debate about basically who messed that one up. And long story short, what came out is that she was a perfectionist, high performer who could never miss a deadline and could not do anything but perfect work, what she did, better than anyone in the company. But it was destroying her life. So she couldn't drop her standards and do less crappy work. She would talk to her boss. She was actually a director that was the executive that she reported to. She talked to her boss. He didn't do anything about it. So finally, she had to quit to save face and her soul. She had no option but to quit.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't not deliver, and then she couldn't destroy herself and her family in the process. It was now interestingly, it took a couple of years. They got her back, thankfully. But it was sad. It was also a stark reminder of the downside of these committed high performers. And when they start to let us know it's a bit too much, like we got to be there to help them out and back them up and help them to reduce the stress and find ways to still have a great life. By the way, last point, Brad. It's also why for our companies, we make sure all the key executives have goals for their own resilience and their growth, which goes back to your oxygen mask first, in addition to their work goals, so that we keep the self goals on the radar, because that allows them to stay healthy and resilient and not not get destroyed. But I'm sure you have some thoughts on this, Brad. Sorry, I get really excited about this one.
It's okay. Yeah. So from the book, 70% of people say that they don't have a healthy balance between work and personal lives. 70%. Okay. And 60% of people would give up some pay in exchange for more personal or family time. Now, does that mean that you need to turn to a 4-day work week at your organization? Well, no, it doesn't mean that. But it means that you've got to understand 70% people say they don't have a healthy balance. So how can you work with that? Now, I've got a company that I work with, and one of their core values is about community. Okay, and we did this exercise, which is do and do not. So it's basically for the core values, saying how do you get everybody in the organization to understand. So do this and don't do that. That's how you're living the values. So within community, what they said is do not is missing the school assembly for your kids. And so that in terms of their values is a great example of how you can do that. So school assemblies can be, they don't happen every day, but they can be quite important for some people. So if you're at work and you're missing something like that for that organization, that's a real letdown. So they're kind of saying this is what really matters to us.
And they're helping to build it into the environment so it's socially acceptable. Yes. And many companies we work with have cultures where it's encouraged to do those things. A lot of the companies we work with still really care about their people. They haven't lost their soul yet. We catch them before they lose their soul, and we try to get them to hold on to the damn thing. So they still care about it. And I think it's important because in some cases people want to do it, but they're afraid to look bad or look uncommitted or whatever it happens to be. So when you have mechanisms like that that encourage it, it's awesome.
Well, if you're an employee, just to close this out, if you're an employee at that organization, you're going to be thinking to yourself, well, this is a long-term job. Like, this is a sustainable job. They want me to be healthy on multiple levels, which is what we want.
It is kind of what we want for all of ourselves and our team. So yes, so stress from overwork and work-life imbalance, we got to keep an eye on it. We got to help people to make sure they take care of themselves and have room for what they want in their life. Even as I shared last week for our team on our quarterly goals, we have our goals for work, our goals for ourselves. We also list out the most important things we want to achieve in life. Like, we've got goals for the holistic person because we know that you got to thrive on all of those to sustain success. So let's go to number 7. And this is a bit of a sensitive one. It's the reason why I actually stopped working with one of my clients, because in many ways we're like a bit of a, in many ways like a team member, but it's loss of trust and confidence in senior leaders. And senior leaders, we make mistakes all the time, ourselves and the people we work with. But sometimes people do some things that people just, sometimes it's a difference in beliefs about how you handle a situation. That happens. I had a CEO I worked with, generally was a good guy. Actually, I've had a few, but one, he was a good guy. I like him. I would still chat with him. But working with him, he did one thing one day that I found out about something that he did. And I'm like, you're not my kind of guy. And I'm not going to disclose anything about what it was, but it was just like I lost confidence in him immediately because of the way he conducted himself. It was. And that created disengagement. In my case, I stopped the engagement because I don't like that. That just was something that I lost trust in him and in terms of his leadership. I've seen it with other people. And there's so many things that go into building trust and confidence. A lot of it is, doing what you say, and just being a straightforward, good person. But, trust is a big deal. And when you don't trust people, you don't want to hang out with them, or especially working for them.
Yeah. So one of my favorite reads each year, just to go absolute full nerd on you, is the Edelman Trust Barometer. So the Edelman Trust Barometer, every year they do a survey all around the world. Most countries, I'll say. So certainly OECD countries, but most countries. And they survey politics, media, and business. And I think this year in 2021, business was the highest trust, and CEOs was amongst there. But is the trust level in your organization higher than the average? That's an interesting question to consider. And of course, people have a great struggle on this, to look in the mirror. And I don't know that, depending on the size of your organization, it's worth considering surveying it. But it's what are you doing to undermine trust in your organization? The data from the book says that companies with higher trust levels outperform companies with low trust levels by 186%. So there's a compelling reason to focus on trust, what undermines trust, and how you can build more trust within your organization.
For sure. Like within a team, trust is a big thing. We work on it. We're building healthy executive teams, right? We do a ton of work around that, and the trust is a big component, which there's things to help it. But there's also there's Stephen Covey's son, and I think it wrote a book called The Speed of Trust.
Yes.
And there was one thing I took from the book, and it was trust allows for fast interaction, communication, and execution. Because you don't have to document everything and CC the world to cover your butt because you don't trust the person. You notice when you trust something, you just have a 5-second conversation. Yep, I got it done. You don't call the lawyer to document it. You don't even send a darn email. You might make a note, but you can. But when you don't, holy, let me think about it. Half an hour engineering a conversation, 14-line email to confirm, please respond to confirm. Maybe we get the lawyer, maybe we involve HR, maybe I double check with my boss. When you don't have trust, everything gets weird and slow. It's hard on the system. And it's something that we don't think. Interesting, one of our clients in India, you know how you build trust in India? Paying people on time.
Yeah.
Like in Canada, it's not even a question, but in different countries, it's different things. So literally paying people on time, right? It's also why some CEOs have a regular time that they address their companies, right? And it's also the other thing you got to think about. It's also, who do you promote, right? If you promote people that are seen as not being trustworthy, then that reflects on the company. There's all kinds of things. Point of it is understanding that trust is a big deal. And if people lose trust in senior leaders, and senior leaders have to make controversial decisions and do things, it can really have a massive ripple effect. So that is 7 hidden reasons why employees leave. And maybe Brad will kind of review them. But the key point here is that people don't leave because of money. It's number 8 on the list, and it's usually less than 10%. The root cause is one of these other things that psychologically, or a combination of them, psychologically dislodge people, and they start to disengage. And they kind of slip down the stairs of disengagement until they kind of wash out in the ocean. And we think they left for more money, but they just wanted to get the heck away from us. This is often the case. So number 1 reason, the workplace wasn't what they expected. Number 2, mismatch between the job and the person. Number 3, they didn't get enough coaching and feedback. Tell me more. Tell me what I'm doing well, but also tell me how I can improve. Next one is there's too few growth and advancement opportunities. Well, not enough. They want to grow. They want those opportunities, but you got to help paint the path for them. Number 5, feeling devalued and unrecognized. There's not enough appreciation for what they're doing, whether it's by teammates or their boss. Number 6, stress from overwork or work-life imbalance. Basically, work consumes too much energy, not enough room for them to have a great life. And last but not least, number 7, they don't trust us, the senior leaders. We did something to break their trust, and it could have been a number of things. Hence why we look at engagement surveys and looking for the patterns. Awesome. So Brad, any final thoughts before we wrap it up? Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. So again, that book is The 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave, How to Recognize the Subtle Signs and Act Before It's Too Late, by Leigh Branham. So encourage you to take a look at that. And also, I guess, final point, understanding that if you're saying people are leaving because of money, it could just be that in actual fact, that's an excuse so that you don't have to do the hard work, and it is hard work. So yeah, so with all of that, thanks for listening. This has been the Growth Whisperers podcast. And as always, joined today by Kevin Lawrence, my co-host. And you can find Kevin at lawrenceandco.com and myself, Brad, at evolutionpartners.com.au. So thanks very much for listening. We hope you have a good week. We look forward to chatting again to you next week.